The day was November 2nd, 2016. It was a normal Wednesday in Redding, California. Sherri Papini, a young mother of 2 small children, went out for a jog near her home. She was 34 years old at this time. Her husband, Keith Papini, expected her back soon, but Sherri did not return that afternoon. The quiet neighborhood was about to be disturbed. Her absence would spark a huge search. Keith Papini came home from his job at Best Buy. He found the house empty, which was unusual. Their children were usually with Sherri. He tried to call her phone but got no answer. Worried, he used the Find My iPhone app. The app showed her phone on the side of a road. It was near their home, along with her earbuds. This discovery made his heart sink with fear. He knew something was terribly wrong. The news of Sherri's disappearance spread quickly. Friends, family, and the local community were shocked. How could a mother just vanish in broad daylight? Many people joined the search efforts to find her. They looked in fields, woods, and along roads. The police in Shasta County started a big investigation. They asked the public for any information. Everyone hoped Sherri would be found safe and sound. The days passed with no sign of her. The search for Sherri Papini became a national story. People across the country heard about the missing mom. Her picture was shown on news channels everywhere. There was a lot of worry and speculation. Was she lost? Was she hurt? Or was it something worse? The FBI joined the local police to help. They looked for any clues about what happened. The community held vigils praying for her return. Her family waited, desperate for any news. 3 long weeks went by with no sign of Sherri. The hope of finding her alive started to fade. Her family and friends were very sad. Thanksgiving Day arrived on November 24th, 2016. It was a day usually filled with joy and family. But for the Papini family, it was a day of worry. Then something amazing happened very early that morning. A call came in that Sherri Papini had been found. It seemed like a holiday miracle. Sherri was found on the side of a road. She was in Yolo County, far from her home. It was about 150 miles south of Redding. A truck driver saw her and called for help. She looked very thin and was hurt. She was wearing a chain around her waist and one wrist. Her long blonde hair had been cut very short. She appeared to be in a state of shock. Paramedics rushed her to a nearby hospital. Keith Papini rushed to the hospital to see his wife. He was so relieved that she was alive. He later said she was very emotional. He described her as weighing only 87 pounds. Her face was bruised, and her nose seemed broken. She had a strange brand on her right shoulder. The details of her condition were very disturbing. It looked like she had been through a terrible ordeal. Everyone wanted to know what had happened to her. The news that Sherri was found alive brought relief, but it also brought many new questions. Where had she been for 3 weeks? Who had hurt her so badly? Why was she left on the side of a road? Investigators were eager to speak with her. They hoped she could provide answers. The story of her disappearance was far from over. In fact, a new stranger chapter was just beginning. When Sherri Papini was able to talk, she told her story. She said she had been kidnapped by 2 women. She described these women as Hispanic. She claimed they kept their faces hidden from her. Sometimes they wore masks, she said. This made it hard to identify them later. Her story was frightening and detailed. She said they had a gun with them. She was scared for her life the entire time. Sherri told investigators about the abuse she suffered. She said her captors were cruel to her. They kept her in a dark room, often tied up. She said they did not give her much food. This was why she lost so much weight. She claimed they broke her nose during an assault. They also cut her long blonde hair very short. These details painted a picture of horrible suffering. She seemed like a victim of a violent crime. One of the strangest details was a brand. Sherri said her captors branded her right shoulder. The brand was a word, Exodus. She later suggested this might be a Bible verse. This detail was very unusual for a kidnapping case. It made the story even more sensational. The police took all her claims very seriously. They started looking for 2 Hispanic women, and they searched for a dark-colored SUV, she mentioned. Sherri maintained her story for a long time. Even when federal agents from the FBI questioned her again, in August 2020, years after her reappearance, she stuck to the same details about her abduction. She insisted that everything she said was true. She described her fear and the pain she endured. Her consistency seemed to support her claims. But investigators were starting to find some problems. Little things did not quite add up. Investigators worked hard on Sherri Papini's case. They wanted to find the 2 women she described. They put out sketches based on her descriptions. They looked at many leads and tips. Close to 20 search warrants were written. Some of these warrants were even for places in Michigan. The FBI used its resources to help, but the search for the 2 Hispanic women led nowhere. No one matching their description could be found. As time went on, some things felt off. Sherri's story had some inconsistencies. For example, the details about her injuries. Some injuries seemed older than others. Some did not match her story of constant captivity. Detectives are trained to spot these small details. They began to wonder if Sherri was telling the whole truth. It was a difficult thought to consider. After all, she had seemed so traumatized. One key piece of evidence was DNA. When Sherri was found, her clothes were collected. Forensic tests were done on these clothes. Male DNA was found on her underwear. This DNA did not belong to her husband, Keith. This was a very important clue for the police. They needed to find out who this DNA belonged to. It could lead them to a suspect or something else. This discovery was a turning point in the case. The investigation slowly started to shift its focus. What if there were no kidnappers? What if Sherri Papini was not a victim of abduction? These were hard questions for investigators to ask. They had spent so much time and resources on the search. The public believed her story of survival, but the evidence, or lack of it, was pointing elsewhere. The mystery of Sherri Papini was deepening. It was becoming more complex than anyone imagined. Section 5. The ex-boyfriend's secret. Uncovering the truth. The male DNA found on Sherri's clothing was a big lead. Investigators ran it through DNA databases. They were hoping to find a match. Finally, they found one. The DNA belonged to a man named James Reyes. James Reyes was a former boyfriend of Sherri Papini. This was a surprising development in the case. Why would her ex-boyfriend's DNA be on her clothes? The police needed to talk to James Reyes. When investigators interviewed James Reyes, he told them a secret. He admitted that Sherri Papini had been with him. She had stayed at his apartment in Southern California. This was during the time she was reported missing. He said Sherri had contacted him before she disappeared. She told him she needed help to get away. He agreed to help her and picked her up. She stayed with him voluntarily for those 3 weeks. This was a completely different story. James Reyes explained more details to the police. He said Sherri asked him to help her create injuries. She wanted to make it look like she had been abused. He told investigators that she hit herself. She asked him to hit her too, but he was hesitant. He said she starved herself to lose weight. She also cut her own hair. He even helped her with the branding on her shoulder. He used a wood-burning tool to create the Exodus mark. This information changed everything for the investigators. Sherri Papini had not been kidnapped at all. She had planned the whole thing. She had made up the story about the 2 Hispanic women. She had caused her own injuries. The entire abduction was a carefully crafted lie. The police now had evidence of a hoax. The search for her captors had been a waste of time. The truth was finally coming out. Section 6. The hoax exposed, arrest, and shocking confession. With the new evidence from James Reyes, the case shifted. The FBI and local police had enough proof. They knew Sherri Papini had lied to them. She had lied to her family and the public. On March 3, 2022, nearly 6 years after she vanished, Sherri Papini was arrested by the FBI. The charge was for making false statements to law enforcement. She was also charged with mail fraud. The news of her arrest shocked many people. After her arrest, Sherri Papini faced a choice. She could go to trial and fight the charges, or she could admit what she had done. In April 2022, she decided to make a deal. She signed a plea agreement with the prosecutors. In this agreement, she admitted her guilt. She confessed that she had orchestrated the entire hoax. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of mail fraud and 1 count of making false statements. As part of the plea deal, 33 other mail fraud counts were dropped. This was a common practice in such agreements, but the 2 charges she pleaded guilty to were serious. Mail fraud was related to money she received. She had applied for and received victim compensation funds. This money was for victims of real crimes. She had received over $30,000 from this fund. Since her kidnapping was a lie, this was fraud. Her confession confirmed the investigators' findings. The public who had followed her story felt betrayed. Many had sympathized with her and her family. They had donated money and offered support. Now they learned it was all based on a lie. The story of a brave survivor turned into a sad deception. People wondered why she would do such a thing. What made her create such an elaborate hoax? The reasons behind her actions were still unclear, but her admission of guilt was a major step. Section 7. Justice served, prison, payments, and pleading for mercy. After Sherri Papini pleaded guilty, she had to be sentenced. The sentencing hearing took place in September 2022. The judge listened to arguments from both sides. The prosecutors explained the harm her hoax caused. It wasted a lot of police time and money. It also caused unnecessary fear in the community. They asked for a significant punishment for her actions. They wanted to send a message that such lies are serious. The public also watched closely to see the outcome. Sherri Papini's attorney also spoke at the hearing. He argued for a lighter sentence for her. He mentioned that Sherri had past mental health issues. He suggested these issues played a role in her actions. Psychological assessments were presented in court. These reports tried to explain her behavior. They talked about her struggles with her past. Her lawyer hoped this would lead to less prison time. Sherri herself apologized for her actions in court. The judge considered all the information carefully. Then, the sentence was announced. Sherri Papini was sentenced to 18 months in prison. This was more time than her lawyer had hoped for. It was also more than what prosecutors had recommended in the plea deal. After her prison sentence, she would have 3 years of supervised release. This means she would be watched by authorities. She also had to pay back a lot of money. The amount was $309,902 in restitution. The restitution payment was to cover the costs. This included the money she got from the victim fund. It also included the costs of the police investigation. The search for her non-existent kidnappers was very expensive. The multi-state police work cost taxpayers a lot. Sherri Papini began her prison sentence. She was later released from federal prison in August 2023. After her release, she was placed in a halfway house. This was part of her transition back into society. Section 8. A family shattered, the personal cost of deception. The kidnapping hoax did not just affect Sherri Papini, it had a very big impact on her family. Her husband, Keith Papini, had stood by her at first. He believed her story of abduction and abuse. He had desperately searched for her when she disappeared. He spoke to the media about his pain and hope. He was overjoyed when she was found. He supported her during her recovery. The truth must have been a terrible shock for him. On the very same day Sherri was arrested, March 3, 2022, Keith Papini separated from her. The revelation of the hoax was too much. After Sherri pleaded guilty in April 2022, Keith filed for divorce from her. He also asked for sole custody of their 2 children. They had been married since October 2009. Their family life was torn apart by the lies. The children were young and caught in the middle. The financial consequences were also significant. Sherri had fraudulently received over $30,000. This money came from the California Victim Compensation Board. It was meant for real victims of crime. She received these payments between 2017 and 2021. She had to pay this money back as part of her sentence. The total restitution of over $300,000 was a huge sum. This financial burden would follow her for years. It was a direct result of her fabricated story. Beyond the legal and financial costs, there was trust. Sherri Papini had betrayed the trust of many people. Her husband, her children, her friends, and her community. She also betrayed the trust of strangers who cared, people who had donated to help find her, people who had prayed for her safety. The emotional damage of such a deception is hard to measure. Rebuilding trust would be a long and difficult process, if it was even possible for some relationships. Section 9. Scandal and Screens. The world reacts to the Papini hoax. The Sherri Papini case grabbed public attention from the start. When she disappeared, people were worried and sympathetic. When she was found, there was relief and intrigue. But when the truth about the hoax came out, the public reaction turned to shock and anger. Many people felt fooled and manipulated by her story. Online forums and social media buzzed with discussions. People debated her motives and her punishment. It became a story of betrayal and disbelief. The media coverage was intense throughout the entire saga. News organizations reported every new development, from her disappearance to her arrest and sentencing. The strange details of her fake story made headlines. The 2 Hispanic women became a point of controversy. Some worried it could fuel negative stereotypes. The case was a popular topic for true crime podcasts. And television shows also wanted to tell the story. It was a drama that seemed made for the screen. Several films and documentaries were made about the case. Lifetime aired a television film in January 2023. It was called Jamie King played the role of Sherri Papini. Hulu released a limited documentary series in June 2024. This series was titled, Even the rapper Eminem referenced the hoax in a song. His song Houdini, released in May 2024, mentioned her name. These show how much the case entered popular culture. The story continues to fascinate and appall people. Investigation Discovery scheduled a new documentary series. It was set to premiere on May 26, 2025. This series reportedly features the first interview with Papini herself. The case serves as a strange cautionary tale. It shows how far a person might go to create a false story. And it highlights the deep impact of such deceptions on individuals, families, and the wider community.